Part of being a strong commanding officer is having something powerful to say. Now, we've done lists before where we broke down, for example, Captain Picard's greatest speeches and Captain Janeway's greatest speeches. A commanding officer needs to know when to inspire, but also when to console. Quite frankly, anything can happen on the bridge of a starship. Captain Kirk was technically the first Star Trek captain that we were introduced to, as The Cage would take a little while to be aired to the public. Therefore, he became the archetype of what we look to for a Starfleet captain. Many of his speeches have reached iconic status, not just in the fandom, but in the wider world as well. Yes, many of them have been parodied to death, some by William Shatner himself, but the simple fact is that if Shatner hadn't delivered them as well as he had, we wouldn't be talking about them nearly 60 years on. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 greatest Captain Kirk speeches. Number 10. Risk is our business. Return to Tomorrow is a second season episode of Star Trek and contains some of the loftiest ideals that Star Trek had then put on screen. Captain Kirk, speaking entirely as himself at this point in the episode, is encouraging the rest of his crew to remember why they joined Starfleet in the first place. They used to say, if a man could fly, he'd have wings. But he did fly. He discovered he had to. Risk is our business. That's what this starship is all about. That's why we're aboard her. With so much Star Trek behind us now, it's sometimes easy to believe that space is a fairly safe place. Despite some interruptions from the Borg, the Klingons and the Romulans, the Next Generation seemed to be a little bit more comfortable. The original series is a bit of a rougher beast. It was the first. It was truly charting the unknown. Kirk's urgency here is difficult to miss. They're not out in the final frontier, at this episode they're 3 weeks away from Starfleet, to play it safe. They're there to learn, they're there to grow. In this case, they're offering up their bodies to share with the souls of the Aretans, even though it doesn't end well for some volunteers. Star Trek led the path in exploring the unknown, and Return to Tomorrow is a fantastic example of this. Number 9, bigotry in your quarters. Leave any bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge. This is perhaps the very essence of Star Trek. As Kirk, and so early on in the original series, William Shatner was letting the audience know that this was not a show that was going to judge anyone based on their appearance. In his little speech to Lieutenant Styles, Kirk can come across as totalitarian. This is the future. Is not everyone entitled to free speech? Well, what do you mean by free speech? It's a question that's asked today by those who decry that, and it's a question that was being asked in 1966 as well. But also in this episode, it was showing us that perhaps, yes, we will still be able to express free speech in the future. We'll just have evolved to the point where bigotry is not part of that. Styles, if you like, is the archetypal character for that older age of bigotry and paranoia, something Star Trek was absolutely not about. His reaction to seeing the Romulans look like the Vulcans and then assuming that they must be the very same is completely anathema to what Star Trek stood for, both in its ideals and in its mission of exploration. There truly cannot be any room for bigotry when the entire point is exploration of the unknown. Number 8. His was the most human. In many ways, the friendship between Kirk and Spock has become the gold standard when it comes to measuring all other friendships in Star Trek. Here was Kirk, the true human, and there was Spock, the half-human, half-Vulcan, always at war with both parts of himself, and yet still seeming so logical at all times. Though he had chosen the Vulcan way of life, his half-human nature meant that his logical decisions were often aided by his emotional responses. He had a gut reaction where other Vulcans perhaps did not. It were these gut reactions that made him choose the ultimate sacrifice in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, as it would save his friends. Of my friend, I can only say this. Of all the souls that I have met in my travels, his was the most human. The speech delivered perfectly by Shatner broke hearts. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Number 7. People can be frightened of change. Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country is, full disclosure, my favourite Star Trek film. So I'm not unbiased when I say it was always going to appear on this list. But I want you to really listen to this statement delivered by Kirk in the film's final act. It's about the future, Madam Chancellor. Some people think the future means the end of history. But we haven't run out of history just yet. Your father called the future the undiscovered country. People can be very frightened of change. In this brief summary, Kirk manages to capture the pure essence of what drove Valeris and her other co-conspirators to act. It was the fear of what the future might be, spurred on by the fear of what had come before, that made them choose this darker path, rather than taking the fear of what had come before to help build a brighter future. The film directly and deliberately paralleled the fall of the Berlin Wall and was released at a time when the world truly didn't know what was coming next. The Soviet Union was dissolving, and a lot of the fear and uncertainty of the previous decades were now up in the air. What might come next? Well, Star Trek would have you believe something brighter will come if we work together. For Kirk, who was well known to be no fan of the Klingons, who had lost his son to the Klingons, to deliver those words, there could not have been a better example for somebody trying to put the past behind them. Number 6, neat and painless. A Taste of Armageddon is another one of those episodes that quite closely parallels so much of Earth's history if you just pay attention. The war that a Mini R7 is engaged in could be any of the wars we think of today, fought by strangers on the ground, ordered to their deaths by those in power. Kirk speaks to Anon 7, pleading with him to see the logical fallacy of engaging in this kind of eternal war. When logic may not be getting through to him, Kirk goes for the emotional approach instead. You've made it neat and painless. So neat and painless, you've had no reason to stop it. If war is hell, then that's something that should be remembered. For the people of a Mini R7, they had made it so neat and painless that they had forgotten just how horrible war actually is. What was the point of ordering people to their deaths for no other reason than a computer put them in the wrong place at the wrong time? What was to be gained by arbitrary death? There was no gain. There was no cause. Number 5. What is a man? Harcourt Fenton Mudd is not going to top anyone's list on what defines the best of humanity. The man is an open con man and a trickster. Perhaps one could have some admiration for his honesty and his dishonesty, but when it comes to what defines humanity, Kirk puts it best. What is a man but that lofty spirit, that sense of enterprise, that devotion to something that cannot be sensed, cannot be realized, but only dreamed, the highest reality? Mudd had stumbled across a planet of androids who seemed to be only interested in serving humanity, and by serving humanity I mean replacing their weak flesh bodies with android copies. Now, they weren't exactly alone in this. There were some aboard the Enterprise, including Uhura and Chekhov, who did seem tempted by this. However, Kirk believes that, at least in part, his humanity is tied to the physical form in which he inhabits. And while this speech is part of a plot to bamboozle the androids, and particularly Norman, who runs them, into letting them escape, you can tell that he really believes it. It's passionate, it's earnest, and it's combined with a prolonged plan of nonsense to control and confuse those android minds around them. And there is something that humans do best. When it comes to nonsense, we excel. Number 4, I need my pain. Though Star Trek V is often the butt of many jokes when it comes to its overall campy tone, what cannot be denied is that it contains some of the best scenes of the big three in all of Star Trek. When they're on board the observation deck, Sybok implores the three to share their pain with him, leading to an absolutely devastating scene with Dr. McCoy, but also this poignant exchange with Kirk. They're the things we carry with us, the things that make us who we are. If we lose them, we lose ourselves. I don't want my pain taken away. I need my pain. Not unlike another Starfleet captain that would follow, Kirk was well aware of the benefit of the lessons pain taught. Now, as Picard described his version of pain as time, as a companion, Kirk knew that the experience gained from pain is what helped make him the man that he was. Sybok actually seems to take this on board as a necessary evil. Once the Enterprise A is hijacked, Sybok and his followers seem to take on the role of the happy band of hippies, where Kirk is the one to keep a cool and level head, particularly when meeting God. In fact, in Sybok's final moments, I think I can see the man begin to understand what it was Kirk was trying to tell him. Star Trek V may not be everyone's favourite film, but there are still some enormous ideas on display. Number 3. There's no such thing as the unknown. The Corbomite maneuver offers some of the earliest examples of first contact in Star Trek. The Baylock puppet would of course become instantly iconic, featuring in the closing credits of the original series for the rest of its run, and was recently referenced in Star Trek Lower Decks. However, the truth behind Baylock, Clint Howard as a child, allows Kirk to deliver this little pearl of wisdom. There's no such thing as the unknown, only things temporarily hidden. Baylock, himself a representative of the First Federation, tests the Enterprise with his admittedly far more powerful craft. Kirk must bluff to escape, although this leads to the revelation of Baylock's true persona, and also the beginnings of cultural exchange between the two federations, as Bailey elects to remain behind aboard the Fesarius. This episode demonstrates the scary nature of space travel. All of the Enterprise's sensors bounce back off the Fesarius onto themselves, leaving them facing the truly unknown, or the truly hidden. It was a frightening and uncomfortable time for the crew, typified in the reactions of Bailey on the bridge. Though all of the characters were very early versions of themselves, the Corbomite maneuver helped to pave the way for what we would go on to understand as Star Trek. Moreover, it would help us understand what kind of captain James T. Kirk was going to become. Number 2. Don't let them promote you. Kirk's presumed death aboard the Enterprise B was never going to be a fitting end for this captain. That he may sacrifice himself for others, that we absolutely believe. He was, after all, a man inspired to lead and be in the thick of the action. For him, that symbol of the captain's chair meant everything. Don't let them promote you. Don't let them transfer you. Don't let them do anything that takes you off the bridge of that ship, because while you're there, you can make a difference. While there are several admirals in the fleet who may take issue with those exact words, Kirk certainly has a point. It so perfectly sums him up as a character. As a captain, he made his memories, he engaged in his best missions, and although his time as an admiral is most certainly not without merit, it was Captain Kirk who was really remembered in the history books. Faced in the Nexus with a comfy life, it wasn't for him. There simply was no other choice. Captain to captain, when the opportunity arose to help someone one more time, Kirk jumped at it. There's no doubt he made a difference. Number 1. The Prime Directive in the face of war. The people of Tyree's world are first pawns of the Klingon Empire, and then honestly later of the Federation as well, in a conflict that would closely mirror the real-world Korean War. Kirk in this speech gives what's probably an idealized version of what our world might hope for. Nation-states learning not to interfere in the affairs of others. There came a time when our weapons grew faster than our wisdom, and we almost destroyed ourselves. We learned from this to make a rule during all our travels, never to cause the same to happen to other worlds. There are too many examples of conflicts in Earth's history where sovereign states use others as staging grounds for their own battles. In Star Trek, the Klingons and the Federation couldn't engage in open warfare thanks to the Treaty of Organia. The next best thing was to take a page from Earth history and have somebody else duke it out for them. Kirk's speech sees the world as it should be, not as it is. It's a not-so-gentle reminder that in the future, humanity could be damned to repeat its earlier mistakes if it doesn't learn from them. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much. What speech do you feel should have been included here, or what speech from this was your favourite? Let us know in the comments below. Please make sure you're following us on the various socials. I'm at Sean Ferrick. Follow us at TrekCulture as well. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much, everyone who subscribes. It allows us to do videos like this. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you let us know. You have been wonderful. You have been awesome. Risk is our business. No, that's not right.